Remember NFTs? Remember that guy you knew who swore they were going to change everything, but when he tried to explain the blockchain, it kind of sounded like he was off his meds and reciting something he found in an unhinged Reddit post? It's been more than a couple years now, and blockchains still make no sense to me. Then again, neither does generative AI or quantum computing. To me, and to most people, they're basically magic. Probably dark magic. In 1962, Arthur C. Clarke told us that sufficiently advanced technology is indistinguishable from magic, and it couldn't ring more true in the modern era. Today's story takes this concept and runs with it. What if an NFT was a literal cursed object, and wizards were online scammers making big promises to naive people? You're listening to Cosmic Goblins, a fiction podcast featuring stories of cosmic horror, sword and sorcery, science fiction, and all things weird and speculative. I'm your host, Alex Wolfgang. Amara Mesnik's The Wretched Liberation of What's-His-Face was first published just last week in issue number 2 of Goblins and Galaxies. It's timely, imaginative, and hilarious, and it was an absolute blast to adapt. Stick around after the story for a brief chat with the author. Let's get started. Cosmic Goblins presents The Wretched Liberation of What's-His-Face by Amara Mesnik. Davy Knott was not the dumbest wizard in New York. I actually thought he was kind of brilliant. Dude was an idea factory, cranking out schemes faster than Diva Seren shat out new albums, and she was hexed to never rest a day in her life. You'd think it would have made him an entrepreneurial whiz. He sure did try, but his strength was also his downfall. His quick mind was like quicksand. Concepts seldom swelled to full term before he started nipping at the next pretty thing. So it was that in the spring of this year, Davy's 4th startup attempt went under. It was called WizWeb, meant to be a forum for people to connect with and hire specialized magicians. Menders, transmuters, alchemists, charm layers, you name it. And yes, I know, it sounds just like MagePage, but there was a huge difference. You can't even get listed on MagePage without hours of paperwork to verify your accreditations. Not everyone can attend a Wizarding Ivy or blow thousands on certification courses. WizWeb cut out the snags in the process and made its internal recommendation system user review-based. Democracy. The whole thing sounded pretty cool, and much more viable than his previous concepts, so I let Davy pull me back in as a developer. He was the thinker, but I was the maker. I built out the site, and the launch went great. Until the feds came knocking, because apparently 90% of WizWeb's blossoming user base were members of the illicit sorcery scene. Yeah, maybe we shouldn't have left the task of discernment to the public. And maybe Davy shouldn't have conceived our system to allow financial exchanges in Sigillium, a fucking cryptocurrency. You really should have seen it coming, I'm sure you're thinking. But let me make this all quite clear. Davy Knott was not the dumbest wizard in New York. Because I was. 2 days after the Federal Bureau of Magical Investigation's Cybercrime Division seized our computers, I got bored of being mad at Davy and met him in the park to smoke. My girlfriend was in one of her moods again, so I was as good as banished for the afternoon anyway. When I reached our secret spot under an overladen willow, Davy was spread out on a bleach-stained bath towel, already packing his hand cauldron with something caustically violet. He'd always been in the habit of slipping a few herbal packets from his mom's apothecary into his sleeves, but this purple shit wasn't something I'd seen before. The fuck is that? Davy flashed a smile that made my hands itch. This, my friend, is a toast to our next big move. Absolutely not. We've already got the feds sniffing around. If they catch a whiff that we're pushing, that's not what this is. Just sit down and listen. Davy chucked another ragged towel at me, then lit the cauldron with a finger flick and took a long, slow pull of indigo haze. He coughed, then burped, and explained. Tyrian glow dust. New on the market. Organic or some shit, I don't fucking know. It's smooth on the intake, and it'll have you seeing auras after one hit. But that's not the point. It's who I got it from. He pulled out his other phone, the sole survivor of the FBMI's confiscation, and showed me the lock screen image. It was a grinning cartoon wizard of the sagely sort. Long beard, dripping in robes. The sort of stereotype you weren't supposed to reference anymore, even though half the wizzies in the outer boroughs still rocked the cloaks and staffs. At first glance, I thought it was some new cereal mascot, but the line work was too shitty to have passed by a brand team. Not to mention inconsistent. The sigil plate drawn in the little dude's hands was incongruously detailed compared to the simple figure who held it. Starkly so, I realized, squinting to make out the intricacies. I wasn't a sigillustrator by any means, but it almost looked real enough to hold a spell, which would have been nuts if it was what I thought it was. I chucked the phone onto his lap. Seriously? An NFT? Nobody does that shit anymore, man. I hope you didn't spend actual money on that. Bro, you don't even know. This is an actual Sigmunk, fresh from their new drop. Yeah, I spent the money, but it's not just a picture. Buying one of these is your ticket into the monastery, the Sigillium Monastery. I know you've heard of it. Every top wizard in the world is in the club, man. Grandmaster Barthelius, Dark Jacob, Odious Aldrador, Lupa Parnaxis. They still do meetups, and they've got hookups like you won't believe. And money. I'm already pitching WizWeb 2. You need to get one of these, man. I know you've got Sigillium in your wallet just rotting. Plus, these cute little guys all come with an AI-composed sigil of blessing. Look at this shit. I got a Brighton. Davy muttered some words under his breath and waggled his fingers at his phone screen. The air around him began to glow. Had to admit, I was impressed. Most AI Magecraft models were too underdeveloped to string together a coherent spell. Even at the height of NFT hype, the projects I'd seen promising some kind of magical potency had all turned out to be rug pulls or poisoned apples. But Davy's JPEG almost seemed like the real deal. Generative sigillustration. Curiosity set my fingertips a jitter, and suddenly, my own other phone was in my hands. If joining this project meant I could meet the masterminds, a few lessons from them in advanced digital sorcery could go miles beyond the pricey postgrad devcasting courses I'd been eyeing. Maybe they could even offer me a real job. And if the socials saw me hanging out with folks like Aldrador and Parnaxis, damn, my whole life could finally change. I was so starry-eyed about my future, I'd forgotten all about my pissed-off girlfriend. When I returned to our one-bedroom Wartsburg broom closet, the petite Long Islander was standing in the narrow galley kitchen with her arms crossed, aura flaring crimson. I showed her the little smiling mage on my other phone. Babe, I said, this is it. I'm gonna change our lives. Soon, we're gonna be living so well. I hope you're joking, said Zanilla. Like vanilla, but zany, she always told new people with a sing-song voice and a little shimmy. She wasn't dancing now. You'd better be fucking joking. I sighed. Sometimes I forgot she was sparkless, a member of the non-magical majority. I knew you wouldn't get it. What is there to get? You just blew your savings on a dumbass picture that looks like a little kid drew it. It's modern art. One of a kind and spelled. No screenshots, no saves, no dupes. It's tied to my wallet, my name, so I'm the only one who can ever have it. Very cool tech magic. And anyway, it's about the community. Every big-name mage has a Sigmunk. You like Lupo Parnaxis, right? Now we're in the same exclusive club. Her scowl softened, though her arms stayed crossed. You and Lupo? Really? Really. Maybe I can take you to meet him at the next event. Zanilla ran a hand through her bottle blonde hair, looking daydreamy. Must be a nice event if Lupo's going. I'd need to look the part. That means new hair, new nails, new products, new clothes. You look gorgeous already. You don't need any of that stuff. Just be yourself. Her scythe-sharp eyebrows bunched. Now you're the one who doesn't get it. You can't be yourself and get ahead. You've got to be better, even if you have to fake it. Yeah? Whose money are you faking it with? My loving boyfriend's, who said he was going to take care of me and make me happy, Zanilla pouted. What kind of wizard are you? Can't you just magic us some nice things? That's not how it works. There are laws against— Fuck the laws! You've got the spark. If you stopped being such a wuss about it, you could make your life so much cooler. You think Lupo hasn't transfigured himself some extra cash here and there? I'm sure he has. People like him can do that sort of thing without a spell-sniffing cop batting an eye. But I'm not him. I'm under federal orders not to leave the city from the last time I tried to flex the rules. I'm doing all that I can, Z, but the bills have got to come first. And I'm still not sure if Davy can send me my last paycheck while the investigation's on. Maybe, just maybe, if you got a job too, you wouldn't have to rely on me to treat yourself. Zanilla's cheeks flushed to match her aura. You really are the bottom rung, you know that? You think you're gonna make it big, but you haven't even started climbing. And I'm done trying to show you how. Have fun with Deadweight Davy and your fairy scam whiz club. I hope it's worth it. She swept her hair over her shoulder and stormed into the bedroom. I sank down onto the sofa, mocking her words under my breath, and tapped my phone to display the lock screen. You're worth it, I assured the monk, reflecting its grin. She'll see. I woke up to a note. Zanilla had gone to her sister's in Queens. She needed some space to breathe and think. 2 activities I was pretty sure she could do anywhere. Whatever. I needed some time to figure out what my sigil of blessing did. Then I could wow her with it, and she'd be too dazzled by the magic to be mad. I should have done that in the first place. It worked every time. Aside from my other phone and the kitchen appliances, the FBMI had taken everything with a power switch, so I was forced to refer to my stack of old college textbooks. The outline of the monitor stand they'd been propping up was still imprinted on the top volume in dust. The 3rd tome down was what I needed. Infusing Symbolism. Advances in Dynamic Sigillustration. I cracked it open, palms growing reflexively clammy. Sig 3 was infamously the hardest class at CUNY Orb Tower. I'd passed by the skin of my teeth, plus some embedded eye cheating apparatuses Davy and I had home-brewed in the dorms. I refreshed myself on all the aspects of a sigil. Arcs, angles, trines, squares, radii, intercepts, recursions, star marks. Then got a piece of paper and started annotating everything I could identify on my little monk's plate. It was appallingly complex, like the works of the ancient master sigillustrators we had to decipher in class, yet even more mechanically precise. For every set of minutiae I uncovered, another 2 seemed to emerge in the periphery. I sighed, running a hand through my hair. This was gonna take— Wait. I looked at my hand. It was covered in a layer of fuzz. Of fur. Of hair. My hair. I jumped up, sending my ergonomic gaming chair swiveling backwards. What the fuck? I breathed, flapping the dark strands from my fingers. Just to check, I passed my hand over my scalp again. Loose hair rained down around me like ultra-thin confetti. I bolted to the bathroom, cursing as I fumbled for the light switch. When it blinked on, I stifled a screech. My hair was all but gone. Only a few pitiful tufts remained. I looked like a tunnel troll, an elder gnome, or my neighbor's crusty little chihuahua that time it got ringworm. And my face. Patches of skin were peeling off, edges curling like a bad sunburn. I picked experimentally at one of the cuticles. My skin lifted easily, and just kept lifting. My stomach twisted. What the fuck? What the fuck? My first thought was that Zanilla had gotten her psychotic witch friends to hex me again. The last time she'd been angry with me, they'd spelled my eyelids shut until I'd apologized. The time before that, they'd zapped all my shoes 2 sizes smaller. Reversible inconveniences were one thing, but this was beyond too far. I called Zanilla. She didn't pick up. I called again. This time she answered, with a sleepy voice as if she'd just woken up. What? What do you mean, what? You fucking hexed me again. No, I didn't. Whatever you screwed up this time is your own damn fault. My hair is falling out, Zanilla. My skin is peeling off. Are you sure you didn't say something to the girls that might have pissed them off on your behalf? Maybe something they misinterpreted? 'Cause, you know, they're not really the most patient and understanding. Zanilla laughed. She chuckled and chortled and snorted for a full minute. Then her voice fell abruptly flat. Fuck you. Don't call me again. I'll come by later in the week to pick up my stuff. By then, I hope you're bald. Dick. Zanilla. The line went dead. I sat on the floor, ignoring the crunch of old crumbs under my ass. Maybe Zanilla was right to laugh. I wouldn't put this shit past her sadistic little girl gang, but this wasn't something she'd have them do. She'd always said my hair was my best feature, and even if she wanted to split up, which I was starting to think she did, why waste the years of effort she'd invested into my skincare? Well, if it wasn't Zanilla's petty hex, it had to be something. I hadn't thrifted anything recently, which always bore the risk of bringing home an old curse or malignment. Nor did I recall crossing any mages, crones, djinn, or fae. I'd checked my apartment's wards after the FBMI took my stuff, to make sure none of my protection spells had been tied to my devices. The only new mageware in the place was my Sigmonk. I dropped into my gaming chair and snatched the textbook, heart thundering as I skipped past some of the trivial geometries and set about decoding the sigil's core word. It took me almost an hour to figure out which pattern case the AI had used, which turned out to be an astronomical dot ref, and then another few to painstakingly isolate and match the clusters of dots in the sigil to stars along certain radii to produce one letter per cluster. From ascendant to descendant, I identified S-C-O-U-R. Then dropped my pencil. I dialed Davy. Yellow? If this is about the check, I just need what the actual fuck, man. My Sigmonk is a freaking scourge. I just read the sigil. Did I get scammed? Davy sniffed. Huh. That can't be right. You got it from the site I sent you, yeah? Yeah, I did. So what the fuck happened? Did I get bait and switched? Or did their stupid AI go haywire and actually mint me a hex? I don't know, man. Davy sighed. He sounded absolutely zooted. I'd ask around the monastery subscrolls if anyone else had an issue like that. Maybe the admins can swap it out for you. At least it doesn't have an auto trigger. Shit would suck if that took effect. I sent him a selfie. He slurped in a breath through his teeth. Ooh, that's... You know what? I've got a silver lining for you. This is perfect timing for a bit of disguise. 'Cause, the feds came back, and they were asking a lot of questions, and they gave me a funny little bracelet to wear around my ankle. I closed my eyes and pinched the bridge of my nose, feeling the remnants of my eyebrows depart. What did you tell them? Come on, man. You know I'm no yapper. But this old whiz came in with an orb of truth. I don't think that's even legal outside a courtroom. What did you say? Just that I was aware all along of who our users were, that I maybe might have advertised in a few underground locales, that it was all my idea, of course, but I might have mentioned you designed the entire platform. I know, but they really seemed impressed by your code. I was just trying to give you props. I mean, when you think about it, the whole situation is pretty funny. In a few years, we're going to look back at this from our yachts and laugh. I hung up. No returns, no refunds. Once it's minted, it's yours till you sell it. Yeah, I'd skimmed the T's and C's when I was connecting my wallet, but I hadn't expected to be dealt such a shitty hand. Now I read them again, thoroughly. The legal team must have been djinn or fae, because they didn't mince a word and had their asses covered at every turn. Even if they accidentally vended a curse instead of a blessing, the response to any sigil's effect is subject to interpretation, and thus cannot constitute a liability claim once the agreement has been signed. No cuts, no buts, and definitely no magic coconuts. I went to the official Sigmonk exchange platform and put my nasty little wizard up for sale. Deranged glee nearly had me giggling at the thought of finding some other schmo to stick with it. A scourge hex was an absolute nightmare. Its target would soon find their life swiftly, meticulously, and perhaps even literally torn to shreds. The sooner I could get this thing off me, the better, since its effect was already well underway. Which was, I'd bet, exactly why my listing was reported hardly 10 minutes later. Fake listing was given as the reason. Bullshit. I'd set it up directly from my monastery account, which contained the hash, metadata, and any other verification info someone could possibly need. This wasn't WizWeb's laissez-faire approval system. This was the blockchain. How could it possibly be faked? I hit appeal, then went over to the Scrolled app and asked the SigeMonkExchange.scroll forum what had happened. The responses were almost instantaneous. Sweet Marie 112. Obvious gonna get taken down if you're scamming, asshole. Parnaxis Fave Kitten. Oh shit, you're the guy who listed the fake monk? How'd you do it? Tex-Mex Hex. We all know it's a scam, bro. You can't mint a cursed Sigmonk. Farttholomew. Sigil Scraper 777 confirmed it's got hostile geometries. There's no way the AI spit that out. Mad hack, though. Damn. How had they surmised the words so fast? The preview on the site could only be scaled to a certain resolution. There was no way they could have parsed the geometries, let alone in under 10 minutes. I was annoyed they'd snitched on me, but begrudgingly impressed. The appeal was granted and the listing was allowed to stay, but after a while it was becoming clear that nobody who'd seen the forum was gonna bite. Whatever. This wasn't the right crowd anyway. I needed a duller bunch, a more desperate scene, and I knew exactly where to go. SigeBoys.scroll. No esteemed tech mage would be caught dead in the SigeBoys subscroll, a known neckbeard nesting site. Most of them were sparkless, woefully misled into thinking the Sigillium community could get them access to dope magical items or babes. In other words, they were easy prey. I posted my listing. Selling spare monk, floor price, new mint. Looking to add more underappreciated talent to the monastery. DM for proof of ownership. After a few minutes, a couple likes popped up. 3 people tagged other users in the comments. None appeared in my inbox. The sun began to set, golden beams illuminating the rings of fallen hair and skin flakes around my chair. I tapped my phone to check the time. Beneath the clock, the monk seemed to sneer. I briefly considered defenestration. Then, a notification popped up. A new DM. Forsworn Faker. Hey, my friend is interested if the Sigmonk is still clear. He's not on this subscroll, but you can reach out here. I nearly moaned in relief as I tapped the accompanying profile link, which, for some reason, took me to the scrolled browser site, where I wasn't signed in. Too excited to question it, I punched in my login details. Then the site began to glitch, and I watched in blank-faced horror as an animated fairy appeared on the screen, pointing and laughing in a 5-frame loop. After a moment, the GIF changed to a fae with a fishing rod, still cackling at my expense. Words appeared beneath it. Foolish being, you have bequeathed your account to the folk. Follow our commandments if you wish to regain the yoke. Shitty-ass rhyme. I closed the page, tossed away my phone, waved a hand to shut my blackout curtains, and went to sleep. Morning brought no respite. I awoke in a pile of grated Parmesan, my over-exfoliated and fully epilated skin ass-clenchingly breezy as I got up. I lumbered into the kitchen, where all my cheap prints had suspiciously fallen from the walls, and poured some cereal, suddenly stale, and milk, spontaneously putrid, directly into the garbage. As I shoved the folded cereal box into the recycling bin, I noticed a heap of letters on the floor behind it, presumably slid under the front door. I rifled through the stack, heart sinking with each postmarked date. They were letters of warning from my landlord, some 2 months old. Apparently, my checks had bounced. I was now 3 months behind on rent. The latest missive, a final demand notice formally served 2 weeks ago, had given me 14 days to pay up, or face eviction proceedings. I rang Davy. Booty beep, this line has been disconnected. I tried his other phone. Same result. There was only one reason he would have disappeared like that. And if he'd been arrested only a day after he'd sang my name to the feds like a brown-beaked canary. I sank into a chair at the kitchen table, cradling my head in my hands. It was karma, wasn't it? Just desserts for allowing myself to be led on by Davy's glitzy schemes. I'd thought I was finally overcoming my own aimlessness by pairing my knack for making things with Davy's sense of direction. With his wind in my sail, we were going to take the digital sorcery world by storm. People were going to know our names. Aldrador and Parnaxis were going to be clamoring to meet us. The storm had come all right, but the only place I'd been blown was right off a cliff. Below me, my chair creaked in haughty agreement. Then it buckled, sending me to the floor with splinter-pierced palms. "Come on," I shouted, loud enough to stir the neighbor's chihuahua into a yipping frenzy. That was enough. Self-pity wasn't going to get me anywhere. I had to break the curse before it killed me. It was time to hit the emergency button, and her name was Nancy. In the musty hall of the old Twixt the Bridges tenement, I banged on number 5's metal door, then stepped back to wait. After a minute, the peephole cover squeaked open, punctuated by an irritated sigh. Locks clicked in a lengthy cascade, wards depowered with ear-tickling crackles, and the door jolted open with a grunt of metal hinges, only to halt abruptly, braced by a brass chain. A narrow, crinkly-lidded yellow eye peeked out through the slit. "What do you want?" the crone said in a high, sinewy voice. "I'm working, so whatever this is, make it snappy." I moved closer. "Nance, it's me." The eye darted around, inspecting me for a long moment before recognition struck. "Hag's bonkers, it is you. You look like an old tortilla. Lover's quarrel or another experiment gone wrong?" "Neither. Look, I know I said you'd never see me again, but I need your help. I've been cursed, Nance, a scourge." The crone looked amused. "Guess your sparkless girl isn't of much use on that front." We broke up. "Good. Maybe you do have a couple neurons still knocking together in there." Nancy slammed the door in my face. Then came the sound of a sliding chain. The curse-breaking crone's apartment was bigger and brighter than I remembered it, perhaps because the curtains had always been closed when I was here. Heavily warded glass cases and small spell-wrought cages lined the walls, displaying the maligned objects she'd either failed to cleanse or chosen to keep in containment. She was one of the best in New York at what she did. I'd always wanted to get her listed on WizWeb as an exemplar to other lawfully inclined magicians, but after the way we'd parted, I'd never worked up the nerve to ask. Crones, you see, are seldom actually as old as they look. Their kind merely suffers from an excess of skin, like those Shar-Pei dogs. Zanilla, like most sparkless who'd grown up mainly around their own sort, couldn't get it through her head that Nancy and I had a past. In her disgust, she'd taken it upon herself to make sure my former classmate, and former bedmate, would want no part of me ever again. And I'd let it happen. All because a hot babe had paid attention to me for the first time in my life, and I decided to risk it all to pull her, even at the cost of my friends. Nancy had me stand on a containment square in the corner of the apartment as she sat down with my phone and a jeweler's loupe. She flicked a set of multicolored crystal filters in front of the glass, inspecting not only the sigil plate, but the little monk as well. I began to sweat, or possibly to leak cerebral fluid, as moments turned into minutes without a word. "Well," she finally said, "you really are a dipshit." "I know," I said with a sinking heart. "I never should have let her say those things to you, so if you're still pissed, I understand. But look, Nance, I'm scared." "No, idiot, this isn't a scourge. It's a scour. I don't know why you jump to conclusions. There are only 5 letters in the word." "Oh." I shrugged, sheepish. I was in a rush. What's a scour, then? Not a curse, for one thing. Just a rough cleanse. It removes that which does not serve you. I coughed out a disbelieving laugh. My hair isn't serving me? My skin? I'll admit, this scour is stronger than the others I've seen, but the principle is the same. Only by purging the old can the new settle in. I don't want to purge the old. I like the old. I mean, not really, but it's sure as hell better than this. So can you break the sigil or not? Nancy set down the loupe. It's too deeply entangled. Blockchain magic has been a nightmare for us curse breakers. This thing has been tied to your identity in the whole system. So the only way to completely deassociate it with you is... The look she gave me was downright pitiful. It took me a moment to understand. No, I said, stepping out of the containment square and snatching my phone. Absolutely not. I can't just give that up. The Scour seems to think you can. Has it really been serving you well? It's my whole life, Nance. It's everything. The crone shrugged. Like I've told you before, it's not as big as you think. I didn't go home. I wasn't sure if I even had a home to go to. The feds probably had the building on lockdown, just waiting for me to prance through the door. A bulletin with my name and face on it was likely circulating through the local PDs. At least I didn't look as much like my old self anymore. I traipsed the short distance to the East River, walking aimlessly along the promenade until I came to a secluded bench. There I sat for a while beneath the thunder of FDR Drive, watching seagulls scuffle for discarded French fries. I wondered how long I'd have to lie on the trash-strewn riverbank before they started picking me apart too. Considering the Scour thought my physical self unnecessary, probably 10 minutes, tops. I slumped on the bench, chin to my chest. What Nancy had suggested was impossible. But the alternative, at this rate, was letting the sigil run its course. Was there really an end to it? A point at which it decided I was fully cleansed? Or would it only cease once the last atoms that had ever comprised my being had leached into the soil, taken up by the worms whose names were so primal, not even the Fae could claim them? Shit. I had no good options. My life was over either way. All those goals I'd pondered, all the dreams I'd chased off high-rises, well, I supposed those could remain. What I'd really be losing was my past. My achievements, though there weren't many. My failures, far steeper in number. My criminal record, and the warrant for my arrest, would no longer apply. My inhibitions, my self-consciousness, my hesitations, would be pointless. I wouldn't need to fight to place my name in high esteem if I didn't have one. I could just do whatever. That was pretty cool. Maybe even cooler than Lupo Parnaxis. My hands moved in a blur. I created a new scrolled account under my real name, breaking rule number 1 of our modern Fae-infested internet. After racking my memory for the handle of the dickwad who'd fished me, I sent him a message with my login credentials. Scrolled, Owlist, Vaulter, the monastery, my sigillium wallet, my social security, I gave it all. The fairy responded immediately. Forsworn faker. Utter fool! You dare to cede your name? With full understanding you shall never be the same? Your life and your possessions are now under my thrall. Should you want them back, you'll need to heed my every call. Me. All yours, asshole. Enjoy. I locked my phone screen, then tapped to awaken it. The Sigmonk, unable to be replicated by a non-owner, was gone. The East River burbled. The gulls cussed each other out, and a fairy blared its horn. A warm breeze stirred the shrubbery around me, tickling my excoriated skin. I felt lighter, clearer. A crown I'd gotten used to wearing had been lifted from my temples, but I wasn't going to miss its weight. I, me, the innominate inhabitor of this body and mind, suddenly unbound and unfettered from all expectations, was no longer the dumbest wizard in New York. Congratulations, Davy. I always knew you could do it. I left my phone on the bench, illegally transmuted some leaves into cash, and went off to buy Nancy a bouquet. Hello, Amara. Welcome to the show.
Hi, thanks so much for having me.
Absolutely. So tell me a little bit about the spark that led to this story. Was there a concept or a character that you started from?
I guess definitely the concept. It kind of started with the NFT hype back in like 2021 and just sort of seeing everybody buying up these really expensive images that sort of seem to have no real world value to me at least, and sort of waiting for this bubble to pop, being like, what are these people going to do with these things? Like it's kind of like they're kind of stuck with these things at some point, and it's sort of like a cursed object that you kind of have to try and pass on to try and reclaim any value from them. So that was sort of the idea, was a literal cursed object and then a literal cursed NFT.
Yeah, it's funny. I mean, I think you still hear about crypto fairly frequently, obviously not as much as you used to, but I don't feel like I
Hmm.
hear people talk about NFTs at all. It's like this dark secret that we're all just pretending never happened.
Yeah, I mean, I
Uh,
see like spray painted NFT art in like Williamsburg in Brooklyn, and that's like the only remnant I feel like I see these days.
hmm. Yeah, and I feel like everyone had one or two people in their life who were totally hawking these things and talking about how it's the future, this amazing technology, and it always kind of seemed to me like even when they explained it, I couldn't figure out if I was the dumb one or if nobody really fully understood what they were saying when they were talking about this stuff. And so I like the idea of making it literal magic. I think that was really funny.
Yeah, I mean, I kind of these days I feel the same way about like the Labubu craze in a certain way, where it's sort of like
Yeah.
people just sort of tend towards these like different collectible items, and yeah, to just bring some magic into something very mundane was just something I've always loved to do.
Hmm. So, as someone who knows very little about coding and tech jargon, there was a few elements of the story that had me wondering if it was like real tech jargon or made up wizard talk. Was this intentional? Was it kind of a hybrid of the two?
Yeah, it's definitely a hybrid of both. I mean, during like the sort of crypto hype, my brother definitely got invested into the different crypto projects, and he's like a computery guy, so he was developing some technologies with some of the NFTs, and so working with him, doing some like graphic design for his projects, like little art stuff on the side, I kind of picked up a lot of the jargon, and then I sort of blended that with this sort of made up fantasy versions of things, which I kind of did across like the entire world that we have of like Wizard New York, basically. Um, I just love when like a show or a movie has like, something that's very like a brand or something that's very common in pop culture, but then they like make a different, like a slightly off version.
Mm.
Like I think Zootopia does this like really well.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, I love the crossing over of the sci-fi and the fantasy as well. Um,
Mhm.
and if I am not mistaken, I think that you primarily work in the sci-fi genre, right? Is fantasy something that you write or make films in, or is it sort of a blend of the two?
I guess I've always considered myself blending the two. And I guess most of my published works, both in film and in my other short stories that I published, are pretty much all predominantly sci-fi. But I've always sort of had this fantasy world and these fantasy stories that I've been wanting to write. And I've been working on a novel lately that's sort of separate from all this sort of sci-fi world that is really set in this fantasy world that I've been developing since I was really little. So there's always been like a part of me that sort of loved to combine both of
Mm.
those and has always had like a foot in the world of arts and a foot in the world of science and sort of see how I could blend those two aspects together.
Yeah, it definitely reminded me of that famous quote. I think it's Arthur C. Clarke, the third law of magic. Any sufficiently advanced technology is indistinguishable from magic.
Hmm.
Um, which it makes you think about how it always seems like people want to keep the genres sort of separate, but they cross over in so many different ways. And I think especially in the world of today, when you have people using technology that they don't really understand at all, it feels like magic, you know? That comes across in the story a lot.
Yeah, I mean, we're living in this world of AI nowadays that seems like it's definitely something out of like a 1960s like
Yeah.
sci-fi kind of horror story in a lot of ways. But yeah, I guess there's always a point in we reach a point in technology that seems kind of so magical that it's like you just don't really understand how it happens. It's kind of mystifying.
So the novel you're working on that is set in its own fantasy world, is it kind of a traditional high fantasy or is it what is it influenced by?
It's like a portal fantasy. So it sort of starts
Okay.
out on Earth, normal world, and involves travel to a magical world. Um, it also has some sci-fi elements too. But yeah, it's I've always loved like a lot of epic fantasy and also like portal fantasies, and it was inspired by, I guess, initially like a lot of Chronicles of Narnia. C.S. Lewis's space trilogy was something that I fell into when I was in elementary school. I think that was a really big influence on that. Just the idea of other worlds and other languages and all these creatures and people of another world that you can
Hmm.
encounter.
I don't think I know his space trilogy, but of course, when I think of classic Portal fantasy, the Narnia series is like the kind of the go-to. But is that something that he kind of returned to in this other trilogy as well?
Yeah, I can't remember if it actually might have come out first, or maybe I'm totally wrong there, but I definitely encountered it first. In terms of reading the books, I they were in my, I think, fourth grade library in my classroom, and it's like not a children's series, but I think they just saw C.S. Lewis and assumed they were kind of
Oh yeah.
Narnia adjacent.
Hmm.
But it's just like a at the time it could be considered like a hard sci-fi because it kind of talks about space travel. Yeah, I mean it's
I have to check that out. I feel like I loved Narnia back when I was a kid, but I never really followed up on any of his other stuff.
yeah, I mean I would definitely recommend those. They were really fun reads and they just explore a lot more mature concepts. I mean, I guess
Hmm.
the Chronicles of Narnia is also underlying all of that is some really
Yeah,
cool
yeah.
concepts, but the space trilogy is kind of it's very much about the idea of human nature versus a lot of alien cultures that he encounters.
Very cool. And yeah, my understanding is that you are primarily a filmmaker. Is that sort of how do you balance that with your prose fiction writing? Is your film work kind of like your career stuff and your prose fiction on the side, or do you view it that way?
That's kind of how it's played out for now, I guess. My main job right now is I'm a video editor. I made a lot more films when I was in college. I went to NYU, like to School of the Arts, and I really am looking forward to getting back into more filmmaking and creating more shorts. I even wrote a short screenplay for uh, this short story that I'd really love to adapt into a short film.
Oh, cool.
Um, but then, yeah, writing novels and writing prose has just sort of been something that's always been on the side for me. And pretty much in 2022, I think, was when I started to realize I could actually start publishing prose. And so then I started to publish some short stories, and now I'm working on a longer form piece.
Awesome. And where have your other stories been published?
I have one in Dreamforge magazine, which is called Lost in Intuition. And then I have another one in Luna Station Quarterly, which is called Canary Canary.
Very cool. Oh, so I have to ask, I saw in your bio that you work for BBC, and I checked on your
Mhm.
website and saw a bunch of stuff related to BBC Earth, which I have to ask about because I'm a huge fan. How did
Oh,
that,
yeah. Mhm.
I love watching those nature documentaries.
Mhm.
How did that come about?
I mean, it started with an internship that I did in college, and then it kind of became my first job out of college because I stayed in touch with my boss, and then
Hmm.
I started doing physical media for them actually. So I started doing DVD production, but I was always doing some editing like trailers on the side, and then sort of slowly over the years have worked my way to becoming a full-time creative editor. But I've always really loved BBC nature documentaries. I grew up watching like Walking with Dinosaurs and Planet
Oh,
Earth.
yeah.
And I was fortunate enough to get to do a sort of shadowing program in the natural history unit that makes a lot of those documentaries. And I was able to do some research and some writing and some even some remote co-directing on a small sequence for one of the upcoming nature documentaries.
Very cool. Is that something that you want to continue being more involved with? Do you want to continue working with the BBC like in the long run?
I mean, I definitely loved the experience and I really love the production. I know a lot of that production is based in the UK and I'd probably
Sure.
have to sort of up and
Yeah.
move over there. I guess if the opportunity arose, it would be a really, really cool thing to pursue.
Yeah,
Just
definitely.
talking to all those people was so fascinating.
Are you from New York originally, or did you move there?
I'm from Boston originally, but I moved
Okay.
here for college more than a decade ago, and my dad's whole side of the family is from New York, so it's always been somewhere I've come to.
Okay. So, one thing I like to cap off these interviews with is I'm curious if you've been reading anything lately that's inspired you, or in the case of you, since you're a filmmaker, if you've been watching anything that's been inspiring you.
Oh, that's a good question. In terms of reading, I recently read The Everlasting by Alex E. Harrow, which is just a gorgeous, gorgeous novel about knightly honor and time travel, and it's just like a really cool concept, and it's just written really beautifully. And I feel like I there are certain themes there that I've been working on or working with in the novel that I've been working on. So that was just like a really lovely experience. And in terms of television, I've really loved the Night of the Seven Kingdoms show recently. I really just love like a sort of acerbic take on something that's very traditionally, I guess, a little more serious.
I need to check that out. I like everyone. I watched Game of Thrones back in the day, and now everyone's talking about how it's just as good. My sister's been raving about it, so I need to give that a watch. That novel that you mentioned, is that more on the fantasy side or historical fiction, or is it kind of a blend of the two, I guess?
It's fantasy and it's sort of set within the scope of modern day, and it does take a historical aspect to it where we sort of find out why Earth and this other world have sort of been separate for so long, but it's kind of contemporary. So the language is pretty contemporary that the character will be using.
Great. All right. Well, thank you so much, Amara. We appreciate you coming on the show.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me.
Amara Mesnik is an NYC-based writer and filmmaker with a love for all things science, fiction, and science fiction. Her short stories have previously been published in Dreamforge magazine and Luna Station Quarterly. Amara currently works as a video editor at BBC Studios and spends her free time hammering away at something that's finally beginning to resemble a debut speculative novel. Thanks for listening to Cosmic Goblins. You can check out the full issue of Goblins and Galaxies #2 now at www.goblinsandgalaxies.com. This has been a production of Randolph Literary Press. I'm your host, Alex Wolfgang. Our music was composed by Tyler McLemore. Thanks again, and we'll see you next time.